At this time, in relation to the choice policy, we'll have Keith Oswald and his team come forward to present the next workshop.
And good afternoon. One of the ways our school district provides a world-class education for our vision and mission is through our amazing choice programs, which is very popular throughout our community. And we wanted to bring forward policy 5.016, which deals with our choice programs. And with us today, we haven't brought this policy back to you all since 2009, so I think it's very appropriate to just update, workshop some changes that we're proposing and get your feedback on that. Dr. Licata and Dr. Johnson will be going through the presentation on some of those proposed changes, and also Ms. Carmona has been working with us through the legal department. Dr. Licata?
Good afternoon, good early evening, Chairman, Vice Chairwoman, Superintendent, board members. Thank you, and we're going to try and get through this quickly. As we know, we have world-class choice programs. There's no question about it. We know we do a great job, but there's always a chance we can do better. There's always a chance we can be more equitable. There's always an ability to make sure we refine our programs and make sure we're looking at programs that are operating great to try and replicate, or the ones that may need a little assistance, maybe back off on. So with that, we're going to give an update of what the status is very quickly, and then we're going to go into some of the minor changes, because we have not changed much, but we do need to sit back and listen to hear what the board wants to hear from or may want to look at. One of the key things we do here is we don't just do one part. We don't just do CTE. We don't just do IB. We do JROTC. We do dual language, Montessori, career and technical ed. In there is embedded two other parts, which is reassignment and controlled open enrollment from last year. We have now relocated all those applications into the one system that we purchased about 4 years ago. Parents have a one-stop shop now. They can do their reassignment, they can do their controlled open enrollment and their lottery on the same web page, and it's opened up at the same time. Remember now that we did have a gap where we do have parents who don't have computers. Well, we went from having about 8% hard copies of these 42,000 applications we got this year, down to about 270, I believe, that are hard copies. We still mail the hard copies, we still allow them, but we really have reduced that, and we've given it a lot more look at it. So we do more than just choice down there with the CTE. I want to talk about a couple of the highlights that you don't hear about. We always talk about it, and Ms. Kyler's department, Kathy, and they do such an amazing job of advertising, marketing our stuff. But there are some things you just don't hear about sometimes, and we want to make sure that we emphasize it. And I know you've probably heard this, but we got the #1 International Spanish middle school in North America right down the street at Okehili. We know Dr. David Samori has just created such a wonderful program down there. We know, you've heard this many times, we're the leaders in industry certification. The state and the nation, as far as we've seen as stats we've looked into, so that's pretty impressive considering we're the 11th largest district, and many of the districts in the state are competing against us, including Miami-Dade. Seminole Ridge and Atlantic High, as well as some other schools, including West Tech, really assist in building homes for Habitat for Humanity. There are two different phases here. One of them is built in the school. The other one is built at the site. Atlantic does more on the site, which is unique because the kids step away from campus and work on a house, whereas Seminole Ridge brings it the other way. But they're recognized consistently, and we are giving back, and students that come out of these programs are hired before they leave. The construction industry is booming, and they are hired immediately. Our medical partnerships are key. We have so many doctors' offices that really compete for our students. But more importantly, we also have agreements with FAU that bases a lot of their entrances on ethnicity and background. They really serve our minority population. They do want to see that. It's partnered with FAMU as well. So our students in the minority classes are able to also have a benefit of going directly to FAU. It's a phenomenal partnership with FAMU, and I know someone who's graduated from FAMU a few years ago, maybe 6 or 7. However, I know his biggest fan is University of Miami, and that is one we've recently got. They actually send their medical students up to us to teach our classes in our medical schools, in our academies, where these are interns that are ready to go practice. So it's just above and beyond what a teacher can teach, and it's an amazing partnership. We do partner with so many great corporations and companies, but I know Ms. Smallridge was here today, but the BDB is one of our big ones, and we've really partnered with several initiatives. That is a huge piece of what we do. They combine our schools with our academies and really support it with folks in the field. And we do know we got the MSAP grant. We still have another year. We'll be applying for a 4th year where they extend it. Hopefully we will achieve that. That'll give us another about $3.5 million. Moving forward, and we know the stats on academies. We know kids perform better. Parents are more involved. Businesses are involved. We are able to get specialized education for career and for college. It's not our choice. It's their choice. We got to provide them with both weapons. We got to give them the idea that they can get to a career and they can go to college. And finally, as we move, well, I have 2 more slides, and then Dr. Johnson will take over. I want you to look at our growth. Our growth is impressive. It's both impressive, but now we got to look at it closely. In 13 years, we've significantly grown. We've tripled our programs. That is a great thing. I know Dr. Fenoy is aware that diesel fuel is not a good investment. It is not a good investment at all, and we've reduced our transportation zones, but the money we were put in a gas tank, we'd much rather put into a school with students nearby. It just makes good sense. So as we go through this process, immediately when we're done, we're going to start reviewing and really going over an evaluation process for our choice programs that seem to be struggling, and seeing if we're getting a return on investment and how we can support them. Doesn't mean we're going to go in there and say you're shut down. We're going to go in and say, listen, how can we support? How can we get more kids to your school? And we looked at a couple already just yesterday as well. This is both a blessing and a curse, because now we have so much to look at and make sure we provide for every student. And we know every student applied does not get in, and we're working on that piece. I think this is a big slide. This is an important slide. We always want to make sure we're as equitable as possible, but this slide shows that the students that apply are equivalent to the demographics of the school district that get in. Remember, the students that apply. We want to make sure that everyone knows how to apply, and those are the community outreaches we do. But when you look at these numbers, they're pretty strong. They mirror the image of our schools. We like seeing that. We also want to continue that trend. And when you have that many students being gone through a randomized lottery, you're going to get these numbers. And we want to stay on that number. We don't want to lose track of those pieces. As we move to the next slide, I want to introduce Dr. Johnson, who has taken the role of Director of Choice, and she has improved upon it already. She has made it her own already. And some of the staff that works closely, that when we were asked, do you want to come to the board workshop today and not answer phones, since we released the results yesterday, they jumped at the chance to come to the board workshop. So I'd like our manager, Sandra Weston, to stand up, specialist, Brittany Billis. They are working hard, and we are answering about 700 to 800 phone calls and emails a day from parents who are concerned and just have questions. So we want to make sure we're accommodating them, because it is a hot ticket. We like it, we know it, and we want to make sure every parent walks away at least informed of what their choices are. Dr. Johnson?
Good afternoon, Board, Chairman Shaw, Dr. Fenoy. Before I get started with this slide, there's one other individual from our department that's here that I want to recognize that is also a very integral part of what we do under Choice and Career Options, and that's Dr. Cheryl Batini with our home education. If you would please stand and wave, Cheryl. She works with our families who make that choice to homeschool their children, and we say she's the principal, AP, data processor, school counselor, cafeteria worker for all of those students, and it's 4,000 plus students that we have in home education, so we appreciate that. Dr. Licata has already kind of shared with you some of the successes we've had with industry certifications. This certainly is not new news, but one of the things I want to point out that back in February, when we celebrate National CTE Month, Rod Duckworth, who is the Chancellor for Career and Adult Education in Tallahassee, made it a point to create a little video for us to recognize all of the efforts that we do with career and tech ed and with our industry certifications. We truly are leaders throughout the state, and I'd even go as far as saying throughout the nation. I sit on quite a few national boards for career and technical education, career pathways, and we're constantly getting phone calls from individuals who want to come and see what we do. So we are leaders. Industry certifications, if you look back over the number of years that we've been doing certifications in terms of the students who have earned them, we've had well over 50,000 students walk away from high school with an industry credential, and that's very impressive. Right now, we're sitting at about a 75% passage rate for our students from FY17. Some of the most popular certifications that our students walk away with is the Microsoft Office Bundle, Adobe Photoshop, some of our medical certifications. Again, these allow our students to walk out of the door and be employable right out of high school. Our culinary students, and of course we talked a little bit earlier about coding and the need for qualified candidates with computer skills. We definitely have that as well. This slide is not a new slide. This actually was presented back a couple months ago by Mark Howard's team during the instructional review, but this just kind of reiterates what we're saying in terms of our industry certification versus in terms of participation and performance. By cluster area, we're doing very well. Obviously, there are some areas, such as the transportation area, that we consistently try to work and improve on, but these are some really challenging industry certifications in that area, but we do work very diligently. We have a full staff of CTE specialists that work with our schools to improve these. The next slide, again, is also something from that same instructional review that we wanted to kind of reiterate. In terms of participation, we see an increase from when we started out back in FY13 all the way up to FY17. You can see in each subgroup we have those increases. So when we talk about board policy, this is back to Dr. Licata.
As you know, that policy has not been brought forth to the board since about 2009. It was an administrative decision to keep it. Any major changes, yes, but we have really stayed on that policy, but our legal department felt it, and I think we support it strongly, that it needs to be in front of you every year if there's significant changes. So what you'll see is a lot of cross-outs because it just doesn't apply any longer. There hasn't been any significant changes to the policy, but some of the highlights would certainly be to make sure that we update the procedures manual every year. That is part of the policy. That's the big part. The policy is only a page and a half. It's the procedures manual, and that's what we go through because it's linked and it's connected to it. So that's the operational piece of what we do and how we do it. One of the big pieces we wanted to address in this policy this year that's come under some attention for us is making sure our students all have the same contracts at every school. We want to be consistent. We don't need a school in the north having a different different contract in the south. We work with the legal team. We work with principals. And we made sure that that was amenable to everyone while still being enforceable. When that comes across the board for contracts, we want every student to have the same opportunities and the same guidelines when they operate within a school, and let the schools also have the same. We can't have different contracts out there, so we wanted to make sure we kept them the same. And that includes attendance, academics, and conduct. Involuntary exit, never a pleasant part, but it is part of what we do. And we have to make sure we support the students in their transition, but we have to support the schools as well. We want to make sure it's equitable, it's definitely defensible, and there is a place in there where students are aware of what is expected of them and what, if they don't do that, what is expected to happen. And that's important. Dr. Johnson?
And along with that consistency with the contract is also some consistency when it comes to our requirements of our programs. We outline all of the eligibility criteria that our programs have in our choice booklet every year, so we try to maintain that consistency as well. One of the things that we want to make sure that we are doing is as we make any annual updates, whether it's something as simple as a program wants to go from choice to in-house or vice versa, that we bring that information annually to the board so that you guys are aware of those changes. We also did some work on our program proposal process to kind of build a timeline so that we have planning time for principals to get their proposals in, to have time to be able to have every department that has some impact for a new program, or perhaps the the idea of perhaps transitioning a program into something different, or maybe even closing a program out, that we have the planning time that we need in order to do that. So we've done some tweaking to the program proposal process in terms of the timeline. We also added into the procedures manual some flexibility when it comes to auditions for new arts programs. We know we have some new arts programs that have come on board since the last time the procedures manual was updated. And so we listed the former schools in that procedures manual, and so we added language into this procedures manual that would make it flexible for us to allow schools to propose adding in the audition process for eligibility.
Currently, there is one school that has requested auditions, and it was in their program proposal last year, which was West Boca, and that will more than likely be granted as we move through this process.
Mm-hmm. And so, in closing, in the quote from a very astute board member who came to our CTE dinner, we really are trying to give students, our young people, numerous opportunities and pathways for success. We have a really good system in place, but we're always looking for ways to make things more equitable, accessible, and to make as many of our parents happy as we possibly can in our children, giving them pathways that are going to lead to successful careers, whatever that may be, whether they want to work with their hands or whether they want to go to Harvard or Yale. We want to make sure that we have all of those opportunities available for our students. So thank you, guys, and we welcome your questions at this time.
Mrs. Whitfield, Mr. Barbieri.
Thank you. If it's okay, I have two questions. The first is about the choice programs agreement that we have them do. It feels very scant. It's just a little couple of bullets for people who aren't able to see it. I'm curious about a couple of things related to it. One, is the approach different based on the level of the student, like an elementary student versus a middle school versus a high school student? And then some of the issues that I've seen come up with the conduct has been students didn't feel that they understood what was an exitable offense. And so I'm curious as to how that's reviewed with the student when they do sign on to this agreement, if they understand that. The second question, can I take it after I get the answer for this one, if that's okay?
Oh, in terms of the agreement, we did try to make them as simple and across the board as possible, but to stay in line with other district policies as much as we could. With the elementary template that if that's what you're looking at, you'll see that in the elementary for academic expectations, because there's no eligibility criteria for elementary programs, we didn't put a lot of language in that area. In the academic expectations for the secondary one, you'll see some lines there for schools to have a little bit of flexibility to add in a little bit more meat there into that area. As far as students having an idea as to what is an exitable offense, those things are discussed with the students during the open houses. They're outlined a little bit more on the contracts when the coordinators at the school and the principals go over that at these open houses with the students.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Rico.
Thank you. To amplify that point, because again, some of the issues that we've had experienced informed some of the modifications that the team had identified. So if Ms. Carmona wants to address the issues about the disciplinary type matters and making sure that there's notice and clarity around those situations.
Yeah, so thank you. One of the issues that we found maybe about a year ago, we started reviewing these contracts because we were becoming aware of issues at different schools. And much to our surprise, we were finding that expectations at one school site were different than the expectations at another one. And just like we have a uniform code of conduct for all of our students at all of our schools, we should deliver the same expectations for all students who are in choice programs across all schools. We worked hard with staff at the choice department as well as with principals. We had a few meetings with them as well to come up with some language that also aligned not only with their expectations as principals, but also with our code of conduct. And we tried to also gear the language so that the student who are in elementary school will not have to, they'll have some language that they will be able to understand, whereas students who are in high school have more expectations, and also we're expecting them to also understand what their behavior expectations and their academic expectations are at a greater level than you would expect from a second grader, for example.
So a couple of things, we're looking at the elementary. I see that one of the things is that probation happens after 5 unexcused absences within a month or 10 in a 90-day period. Can the parent excuse the student, or do they need a note from a doctor?
That's handled per our code of conduct, so it would be per our attendance policy.
Right. And so the other thing in the level 2, I think that I'm looking at, it says that a level 2 discipline referral means that you'll be placed on probation. I guess the only thing that would make me feel like that this maybe could be even clearer would be maybe examples, even if it was done in person as a part of the signing, to explain to what a level 2 is, because this has been a learning experience for me as well, just to understand what a level 2 infraction is. And what is worse than that. I want to make sure that our students really use this opportunity to be in a choice program, and hopefully that will encourage them to do well and stay kind of on that right path, because they know that they could lose this opportunity. For some families, this is a really, really big deal, and I want to keep them in the program if they can. Can I ask the other question really just briefly, because we're in the middle of choice season right now? The programs that seem to be the most popular, are you basing the development of new choice programs on the number of people that are applying? Because I've noticed we have big groupings that seem to want certain specific programs. So as we're developing our new programs, are you using those metrics to kind of decide where we're headed as a district?
Yes, there are two reasons why, and the hard, cold facts are some people are looking for a school rather than a program. We know that, can't do much about it, but we want to stay focused on what we offer for students, not a school, but a program. The other piece is, as we look at that, and I'll give a simple success story, Wellington Landings Middle, which was well under-enrolled 4 or 5 years ago, and now it's busting at the seams because we've replicated a program that was an arts program that was really backed up with wait lists everywhere we went. So now that we have a dynamic principal out there who's opened up these programs, now we have a very successful, and now they also have a wait list. So yes, we are using these wait lists to see what we have. It's not as though we can create a new school, but we have to work off of what is successful and where can we place those strategically. And that's part of the plan as we go through the evaluation after we get through this.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Barbieri, then Mrs. Andrews, Mrs. Brill.
Yeah, a couple questions. Boca High School is, Dr. Delgado, is well over capacity. But yet Boca High School has an in-house medical program, and West Boca High School has room, but the children at Boca High School cannot choose the West Boca High School Medical Academy because there's an in-house academy at Boca High School. So I'd like to know what procedures we can put in place so that students don't have, I just find it problematic that in-house programs keep students from going to regular academy programs. And there doesn't appear to be anything in the policy that would allow them to opt out of their in-house program to go to another school. In fact, I think the policy says you have to apply to your in-house program before you can apply anywhere else. So can we look at changing the policy to alleviate some of the problems like the one I have in my district with those two
I
high
like
schools?
that, and the wording would be easy to add because Boca High was one of our first medical programs in the entire district. But we're looking at a place where we'd like to see some students be able to apply. So maybe we could look at some language to say if the school's overcrowded that they would have the opportunity to apply outside there. Because remember, there's the dark side. Go ahead.
If we could just take staff to look at that, because there could be some implications with some other programs. So if we could review that and bring back forward a recommendation.
Okay, and the other question is, just explain to me, if a student applies for, if they got a first and second choice, and their first choice comes back that they're on a waiting list. Yeah, Dr. Cloud, we talked about one student particularly, but if it comes back that they're on a waiting list, and the waiting list is enormous, so it's chances are they're never going to get into that one. They're not allowed, are they allowed to immediately say, I don't want to be on the waiting list, I'll go ahead and give me my second choice, or do they have to wait until they see if there's going to be any placement on the first choice, which by then the second choice academy may be filled with people that, you know.
The student, if they're chosen for their second choice, has to make that choice right away, or they could decline that and wait on the first list.
Okay.
Or they could decline the first and go right into their second choice immediately.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
If they're chosen for it, yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Mrs.
Shaw.
Andrews and then Mrs. Brill.
Thank you. This team sitting in front of me today, you all are awesome. You have spent quite a bit of time with me in the Glades region, as well as the Wellington region, the arts program at the Wellington schools that transitions from elementary, middle school to high school. You did it within the last year. Our new mechatronics program out at West Tech, most people don't know it. It's thriving, and I'm sure people don't know it's out there. And once they find out, they're all going to want to go, and we're going to have to expand the program. As well as West Tech. Mr. Licata, you've sat on the Glades Career Readiness Roundtable. You're out there with us every month and rewriting that MOU with the college so that we can get more technical programs at West Tech and our other facilities outside of the MOU that the district agreed to some years ago. So you're to be commended. As I look out at you all, I call you all the time. You're out there, you're on your feet, and you're really trying to make sure there's equity for all of the children all over the district. And you do put your money where your mouth is, so congratulations and thanks for your hard work.
Mrs. Brill.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to say ditto. As you all know, my district has the most retirees. We have all the retirement communities, and we're chock full of retired superintendents, principals, teachers, and whenever I go out to speak, the first thing they say to me, because they all come from up north, is, do you have BOCES down here? Do you have vocational programs? And when I talk to them about the programs that we offer and the growth, and I bring them the brochure each year, they're just bowled over. And if there's any doubt that our young families appreciate it, our phones go crazy after you have your lottery. I mean, I've joked often with Dr. Licata that I'm ready to leave the country for a few weeks with all the parents calling whose children have not gotten into programs. But I do have a request for data for later on. I know it's going to take some culling. You know already, before I ask, about the number of ESC students who get into our choice programs. I don't need the number who have applied, because many, many years ago we took that off the application. So nobody knows if a child is ESC or not, but I would really like to see the data of how many students we have and what types of programs they're going into, because back many years ago there were a lot of complaints about them not getting into automotive programs and things of that nature. So if there's a way to share some data, I would really appreciate it. And then finally, the new high school, I think it's 000 that's going out in the west in Lyons Road. What's that? Yes. Well, it's sort of in between Mrs. Andrews and mine. It'll have my children. I'm looking forward to hearing what kinds of programs you're going to put there to alleviate, the crowding and the demand in our area. So as soon as you start thinking about that, please share. Thank you.
Mrs. McQuinn and Dr. Robinson.
I promise my questions are easy. And I'm in the document that it's procedures for choice schools and programs. Mm-hmm. Okay, but first, I really do want to thank you, because I was anticipating the calls that I got so many last year, and I only have 2 this year.
Okay, can you knock on wood?
Part of that is the specificity that you give regarding first and second choice, and then applying for controlled enrollment, which of course people understand better now too. So it's nice. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Okay, just 3 questions. They're easy. In the document, on line 745, on strand preference, and it's simply saying for those of you out there that, well, I can tell you that students who are in middle grades, IB, MYP, yeah, I got that, programs, that there's automatic, some priority from Carver to Atlantic High, John F. Kennedy to Suncoast High. I'm just educating the public here. Coniston to Forest Hill High, and Pahokee Middle Senior to Pahokee High. Is there, it's okay if not, I just want to know, is there an accommodation for Howell Watkins to Dwyer? And
It's a natural growth pattern, and we will add it because it's part of the process of
Thank
IB2.
you. See how easy that one was? Okay, the next one is line 1090. It's the composition of the program proposal committee. And my question is simple. Is it possible for, depending upon the level of the program, elementary, middle, whatever, is it possible for the principal divisions, elementary, middle, or high, to have a person standing to represent that level school on the committee? It seems, when I read the composition of committee, it's all district-level departments.
You mean like the regional and instructional
For
superintendent?
the
No,
program
I'm talking
proposal
literally,
committee.
if it, for example, if it's expanding a middle school to a high school, could we have a middle and a high school principal on the committee to hear the proposal?
Oh, absolutely.
I know in the very old days, haven't done that in a while, we did have principal appointees sitting ready to sit in on those committees. See, that was easy too. Thank you. One more. On line 1139, they've worked very hard, folks. There is a statement, and it's not a revision. It says that after a program proposal has gone through everything, but before the actual approval is given, that the superintendent will inform the board about said program. And I notice that's not even new. So I'm really just pointing that out to everyone, that the board, meaning the board, would be informed after that process has been completed. See, that was easy, wasn't it? Thank you so much for your hard work.
Congratulations, Mrs. Quinn. You were 3 for 3 on that. Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. I would also like to thank you for your hard work, and I have a lot of questions. So some of them I'm going to withhold and schedule time with you since this is just a workshop, okay? But several of them I feel the need to bring forward. So the first question is, has this been presented to academic advisory?
It has not.
Okay, I think we should. I mean, that's kind of why they're there, right?
You can schedule that.
Okay, thank you. Then the other thing, and this is tremendously easy, on these, the Choice Schools and Procedure and Choice Schools and Programs Procedure Manual, can we please make sure we add a date to everyone? Because every time it's changed, to put the date, the cycle that it applies to, and the date that it was presented to the board, because the one that was attached to the agenda was, I think, from 2009, but there was one on the website from last year. So I drove myself crazy comparing 3 different versions, right? So if we could just put the date so we know what we're comparing to. Now, I would hope that we would have a choice workshop somewhere like in July or August of every year. I'm not quite sure that that's exactly the right timing, but I think that we need to have conversation about what has been changed for the upcoming year, right? And also to look at the big picture on what we think needs to change for the following year, right? And I think the board, although I get that the program changes don't require the board authorization, I think we should be informed, right? And I would like to be informed and have input on that, right? So the next thing, so we use this term regionalization. I don't think that we have regionalization. And so what I would like to see is and Dr. Licata, you know what I want to see. I want to see what programs we have where. So my pet peeve is that we have a pre-vet program at Wellington High School and a pre-vet program at Osceola Creek Middle School, but the little baby that got accepted to the Osceola Creek program who lives in Lake Park could not get transportation. That is not regionalization, right? So I get that we might not have to have a pre-vet program in every region of the county, but if we're going to say that we have choice, we need to have choice, like for all children, and not based upon their zip code, because that's where we get into trouble, right? So I would like, if we have this annual conversation in late summer, that the upcoming one, that we talk about regionalization, and I think if you guys haven't already done it, that you map it out so you know where the holes are, right? And who's applying where, as somebody said, right? So now, the next thing is, we really need to look at the funding for these programs, right? So I became very much aware that we have two elementary schools in my district. One has a planetarium, right? And gets $313,000 in magnet money, right? And it's called Math, Science, and Technology, right? Then we have another elementary school in my district that's called Math, Science, and Technology. They're supposed to feed to a middle school that's called STEAM or STEM, but that elementary school gets zero, big fat zero, big gigantic fat zero in magnet dollars. Now that's just not right. And so we can't keep talking about equity and access, okay, and have that. We cannot, right? And I'm gonna promise you, I'm gonna blow a gasket if we don't remedy that, right? And that's, to me, is part of the regionalization. So years ago, Dr. Licata, you will recall that we looked at comparing like programs, because back then there was one high school pre-med program that's actually designed to prepare students to go to college and medical school. That was the trajectory, right? And the other ones called pre-med were designed to make you a nursing assistant, right? So I think that we've kind of cleaned that up, right? But now I would hope that we would look at that again, and then also look at like programs and their curriculum, right? So that I have some sense of certainty that if it's a STEAM program at school X, that they have similarly trained teachers and curriculum at school Y that's called STEAM, right? I promise you the two schools that I named with that $313,000 difference in magnet dollars cannot do that. Okay? All right. Now, the next thing is we need to have a conversation about what the success metrics are, right? And that's a conversation down the road, of course, but I get popularity is really important because that's going to increase the likelihood that the student is engaged in their own education. But I think that we need to find a way to look at that in terms of, are we successfully, you showed some data for the industry certification. I think that we need to look at that in the other programs as well. Like, what are our metrics for success? Are we accelerating student achievement because they're engaged and able to choose the program that they want and they got into that program, or not? And then the other thing is this whole issue of programs disappearing that at least I didn't know about until they were gone. Okay. Now, I'm going to wind it up in just a minute. So this other thing with these arts programs, and I've asked this a number of times, for the ones that require auditions, we need to have blind auditions whenever possible. Because every year, including this one, I get these phone calls from parents whose children have had private lessons, right, whose private teachers in the art area says they're magnificent, but they don't pass the audition. And of course, if they're children of color, they believe it's discriminatory, right? So we can remove that concern by having blind auditions in the areas that, you know, like vocal or musical instruments, right? As I believe one of the schools does, right? So we could do the blind auditions, and then the next thing is, we need to have some kind of criteria about how you become an adjudicator. Because adjudicators get paid, right? But it appears to be the friends and family plan, right? And so how do we, I go to these cultural council meetings with all these people who are way more artistic than me, but they can't seem to penetrate and become adjudicators in our programs. So it needs to be some kind of criteria on, do you have to have 10 years of dance experience to be a dance adjudicator? What's the rules? And then are we going to welcome people from outside of that little inner circle that we have going on? Okay. I would like to get ongoing data about children by school and program that apply from the priority attendance areas. Do they get in? Because you know, this was a fight that kind of led me to this school board, was fighting about what was then the middle, was the School of the Arts, is now Bach, right? But so the belief was, the assumption, the understanding was that if you lived in a priority attendance area and you met the criteria, whether it's audition, academic, whatever, that you would get in, right? And that's not what's happening. And so if we go to the procedure manuals, and I just want to point out for the board, so if you have 100 students, 100 available seats for whatever program we're talking about, the way this reads is the principal can choose 20, right? There's an unknown number for the children of employees at that school, an unknown number for military children. Then the priority attendance area kids is a 40-seat maximum for elementary, 20-seat maximum for secondary. Then siblings, there's 20 seats for elementary, 15 for secondary. And then when you get to the Strand, and this is what gives me heartburn, when you get to the Strand, there's 5 seats for elementary and 11 in secondary. Now, the 5 seats for elementary don't really make sense because there's no preceding school, right? But 11 seats, so if you go from Bach to Dreyfus, right, we're saying there's 11% of the seats, if there's 100 kids, 11% of the seats are available, are saved for kids who came from the feeder school. And that is not what I've heard this board talking about. And we talk all this feeder pattern strand stuff, but then we kind of block it. Now, the numbers that you gave in response to my question were not as bad as I was afraid they were, right? So out of the 1,600 and change in the strand feeder pattern that applied, only 450 are on the wait list, right? Only 450. Okay. So I'm putting that out because I think the board needs to have some conversation or at least think about if we want to change those priorities, right? And maybe we brainstorm that as individuals and give it to the superintendent, whatever, so that when we come back, I think we need to fix that. I really do. And I think I'm going to be done with you in just a minute. Okay, I'm going to leave the rest alone, and because the rest of them are like little things that I will be happy to meet with you about. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 very quick ones. One question, and I didn't see it in the material. If a student, because I got a call from a parent on this one, and it was just a legitimate question. If somebody has been accepted into one of our choice programs, and then the family has to move, and they obviously had not had a chance to apply for a choice program in the area, and this is somebody who's moving from the coast out west, do we have a procedure how kids who move during this process can get in?
Yes, we allow for students of like programs. That doesn't happen very often, but if they move, we try and get them to the same like program at the current SAC school or nearest SAC school to save money in transportation. We have moved kids in that when there is not an opportunity for the school to be there, but we still keep within the transportation zone. So the short answer is, yes, if they move to an area with a like program, we'll move them into that program.
If it's one where there's not a program, then obviously they're not.
Then we got to work a little bit about how far they can go and get them inside the transportation zone.
Right. And my final question is, this is the global issue, and I know I've talked to Dr. Cudditt about this one before. How often, and I think that you actually addressed it, how often do we work with the business community to really know that what we're offering as choice programs are meeting the workforce demands? is that an ongoing thing with some of the partnerships you have with the business
We
development?
are on several committees with Career Source, with BDB, with all the chambers that we set with, as well as the colleges, and do that. Now, we have not had our summit in 3 years, and that is something that Dr. Johnson will be recreating. And to go back to the point that we are also, the superintendent has asked us to bring the 10,000-foot view every year to the board on the choice programs from now on. So we'll be doing that. He's already asked us to do that yesterday to start doing that. So
Thank you very much. Dr. Robinson?
So I told Mr. Shaw I want to leave by 5:30, so I'm messing that all up, right? But, so you will see that I asked a question about in boundary kids and choice kids in schools that have both choice and boundaries, right? And so I know that that's not at your fingertips, so I'm waiting for that, but I just want the board to know why I asked that, because I really think retrospectively that we've loaded schools wrong. I think that we have some schools that are like overwhelmingly, if not, we have some schools that are all choice, of course. Then we have some schools that are overwhelmingly boundaries, even though they have choice programs that kids can barely get in, like Plamosa. Okay, so, and then we have some schools that, well, I'm gonna just put it out there. I wanna look at Point Siena. I wanna look at gradually putting some seats for kids that are now in the priority attendance area. I don't know what that looks like, but I think that we really have to balance in-boundary and choice kids. And I say that because of my keen awareness of what I call the heavy lift of concentrated poverty in schools, right? And so we have to do, and one of the things is when we started doing this rapid expansion of choice programs, I remember clearly Tom Lynch was the board chair and said, well, what do we do if nobody chooses the school? And the answer was, we improve the school, right? And so we have to keep that in mind too. But part of that is the balancing act. Okay.
All right. Mrs. Andrews?
I just have a whole lot of good things to say, and I have to tell Mr. Licata and everybody here that we do a lot of partnership with our business community, especially Florida Crystals and the Glades. They've been working with us on their research center, looking at the jobs that are out there that's open, looking at the STEM programs at Lakeshore and Pahokee, and really working with the children to expose them to the different careers within the community and how those careers have advanced to another level with a lot of technology. So that partnership through CT with you all is blooming, and we have a big event on May 11th with Florida Crystals, and maybe you all can come again and see just how the students from the Glades region will be looking at jobs, research, technology to the next level. Thank you.
All right, with no other comments, we'll move to our next item. Dr. Benoit, boundary